Well, good afternoon, everyone, and we are going to make a start. I'm aware that there are still some people coming in, but I think we will make a start because we do have a timeline to follow. So I'm delighted to welcome everyone this afternoon. My name's Anne Patterson. I've been a Chief Education Officer in a local authority, but I'm currently a professional advisor for early learning and childcare with the Scottish Government. And I'm going to chair this afternoon, and I know that we are going to be in for an excellent afternoon. So this session has been set up, and it's been set up looking at the application and interview skills for students or newly qualified, or in fact those who are returning as early childhood practitioners. And just before we start, I know and I am absolutely passionate about what a wonderful profession this is to be part of. So I'm sure you will get a lot out of this afternoon. As we go through the afternoon, it will be recorded, and the recording plus a pack of documents to support the work that's been undertaken will all be available in the coming future, in the near future. During the afternoon, we will have a Mentimeter running, which will allow you to take forward some questions that you'll be able to contribute to the session. A huge thank you to those people who have already sent in some questions, and any that will come from today will be fed into it and hopefully will be answered as part either of today or the frequently asked questions. Could I just ask everyone to mute their mics and make sure that your video is off if you want. At the end, I'll just give you a little heads up, but at the end we are going to have 3 words to describe the event. So if you can think about that whilst we're going through, that would be excellent. So I'm going to get started now and introduce to you the panel. And you are so fortunate to have these 3 ladies with us this afternoon who bring such a lot to the ongoing work of recruitment, I suppose, of our next profession. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves because they are more than capable of doing that. And I'd like to start with Anupama. Welcome, Anupama.
Hi everybody, welcome to the session. I am Anupama Rao and I am a careers advisor with Skills Development Scotland. Um, as you know, Skills Development Scotland is a career service for Scotland, and I support a range of customers with a variety of needs of all ages, although mainly adults, and helping them reach their career goals. So I look forward to provide the support today as well.
Thank you, Anupama. Remind everybody, please, to have their mics muted off because we are getting a little bit of feedback there. And thank you for that, Anupama. Could I come to Amanda next, please?
Hi, thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Godsell, and I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. I work for the City of Edinburgh Council, as it says up on the slide here, and I manage our training academy, ELCA, which stands for Edinburgh's Early Learning and Childcare Academy. It's been running for around 7 years. We're an accredited SQA training centre. We're also an employer as well, and we offer a range of vocational qualifications. And are very much into the grow your own model with training. So I'm really looking forward to this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. And Jacqueline, welcome.
Thanks very much, Anne. Like my colleagues, delighted to be here this afternoon and have the opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Jacqueline Lamb and I'm the Chief Executive of the Indigo Childcare Group based in Glasgow. And we are a social enterprise, third sector provider of early learning and childcare, amongst other childcare services. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And I know, ladies, that we don't actually want to add up the number of years that we have between us. But just safe to say that hopefully we will be able to make sure that you get a good session this afternoon. Okay, so we are going to begin with the very beginnings, the best place to start around applications. And I know that that can be quite daunting, but we'll start off with the first question about what should I consider when applying for a job, and what should I look out for in the job profile and the application form, because it's very important to consider all of that together. So, Anupama, I'm wondering if you could start us off there with a general overview around this area of application and the job profile going forward.
Yes. Yes, when you're applying for a job, I would say, have a look at the job profile which is advertised, whatever the job description is, the person specification, and look at what is the essential criteria and look at what is the desirable criteria, and these, because these are most important to the employer, and this covers your skills, your experience, your qualifications, personal qualities, and so on. And so first you should identify whether you have these things, and remember most of the skills are transferable. So if you're lacking in any paid employment, you might have had the same experience in a voluntary role, so you can include all that experience as well. And what I would say is, if you meet 8 out of 10 essential criteria, then you have a good chance of doing the job well. And when it comes to actually filling out the application form, normally you'll have a chance to put in lots of details about how you match the criteria and the in the statement section of the form. So just provide examples of your experience. Think about, can I do the job? Will I do the job? Will I fit in? What's your motivation? And what is your ability to fit within the team and add value to the team? So I know it might seem a bit daunting, but if you want any support, you can always contact us. And our helpline is 0800 917 8000. Of course, Anne will, as Anne mentioned, all the details will be sent to you later on. And remember that an application form is like a standardized form, so employers can easily compare like for like across all the completed forms. So fill in all the sections including the ones that you feel is not applicable. So if it is not if it's not applicable to you, just mark it so. Otherwise, the employer will think that you've forgotten to fill it. And again, with the application now, remember an application form online is a standard document, the content of which is set by the employer. But if you need to send your own CV, now that CV is your document and you can decide what goes in and where it goes in. And that's the advantage, because you can prioritize the most important, the most relevant, and the most positive information. So you might have to tweak it to different jobs you apply for, so to make it more personalized to the actual job, because the employer is needs to see what you're all about, so this is no time to be modest. um, there is more information on our webinars. We have a webinar called Get Noticed on careers.myworldofwork.co.uk, and of course you can always call our helpline. We also have a handbook which is useful, that is a positive steps to your future handbook, and you will get all the details later on after the session.
Thank you very
Back to
much.
you.
Some really good advice there about actually, looking at the job profile and, not missing these spaces out in the application form. So I'm wondering, Jacqueline, is there anything that you would advise coming from the private and voluntary and independent sector when people are applying for an early learning childcare practitioner type post?
Thanks, Anne. I'm pretty sure Anupam has covered the majority of things that we would generally advise. I think if we look at things that might be slightly different within our sector, then you probably need to remember that on most occasions we potentially have smaller resources to be able to review the applications. And so it's really important that your application, you follow the guidance on the application, you answer the questions as they're asked, and you consider the presentation of it. If we are looking through a mountain of applications, which at this time of year can tend to be the case when people are graduating and coming out of college and university, if you're one of many within there, think about how it's being presented and how yours in particular can stand out from that. Keep it tidy, use your spell check, really basic things, but use your spell check. Make sure that it looks as though you've taken the time to consider it before you've actually submitted it. Maybe ask someone to read it over for you. Especially someone maybe that doesn't have anything to do with early years, just to make sure that it makes sense. There's nothing worse than getting through an application and thinking, what's that about? I don't understand. What are they trying to say there? You've missed an opportunity there if that happens. So I think those would be the only additional things I would add to what Anupam has already said.
Again, thank you, Jacqueline. Very helpful there. And I think that about, phone a friend to ask them to help you to read through it. Because I know even myself how many times my brain is racing ahead of my pen, for example. So I wonder if I could bring you in just now, Amanda, and within sort of local authorities in the public sector, I'm wondering if there's any tips you would give there in and around the application and process.
Okay, Anne, thank you. So in addition to what both my colleagues have said, I guess from a local authority perspective, a lot of our applications, and I'm speaking here purely on behalf of City of Edinburgh Council, but I know this is the case for the other 31 local authorities, that the adverts generally are on My Job Scotland. So what I would suggest to people is you can actually set up an account on My Job Scotland if you've not already done that. You can set up an alert to your phone and actually set up an alert for early years, so it will ping all of the early years jobs for all of the local authorities. So depending on where you live geographically, that's actually a really useful thing to do, particularly at this time of year. We're just saying it's there are jobs coming up all the time. I think another kind of very obvious thing, and this sounds like I'm stating the obvious here, but when you are applying, is to actually make sure that you put down your relevant qualification on the application form. We have had people that have omitted that in the past, and your application will just be thrown to the side. So if you don't specify that you have, you might have the qualification but forget to put it down, or not have it in a really visible place. You need to make sure you're kind of putting that in a very prominent position, and making clear that you've got that qualification, because it obviously is part of the essential criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and some really good advice there. Now, if I can just bring your attention to the code at the bottom of the slide there, that will help you if you wish to put in any questions to the Mentimeter, which I'm sure you'll be able to link to there. So we've had a good start there in and around applying and the application forum. Now, is there anything that you would say are pitfalls and try to encourage people to avoid? I mean, my own personal one there is, please don't use rainbow coloured pens when you're actually doing it. That is one that absolutely doesn't sit comfortably with me, but I will ask first of all, Anupama, if there's anything you want to add there.
Absolutely, and no rainbow pens, and also also the font that you use, try not to use Times New Roman, because that is a default a default a font on Word, and employers think, oh well, they haven't even bothered to make it more personal or use something else. I mean, you could use Arial or Calibri or something like that. That is more liked by employers. The other thing I would say is, do avoid any cliches or stating the obvious. For example, you wouldn't say, I'm hardworking, trustworthy, or, some such similar words, because you wouldn't normally say the opposite of that. So I would say, talk more positively of your experience or of what you've achieved. For example, you would say, I possess the ability to effectively motivate, or you could say, I apply my excellent communication skills dealing with this. So this sounds more positive. So try and personalize it by saying something that is more active, something that you've achieved. So, and the other thing is not to write anything in the personal information section which you're not asked for. So don't voluntary information. For example, if they haven't asked you for your date of birth or they haven't asked you for your address, don't ask that, but complete all the other personal information that they ask you for. So that's basically, I would say, things to avoid, to watch out for.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Very good point there about what's actually required of your personal details. Thank you for that. If I can come to you next, Amanda.
Thanks, Anne. I would say, I suppose, in addition to that, try and be concise and not, for want of a better word, not waffle. So use examples from your practice if you can. I think that's probably quite important, and make it real. It's about you, it's your application. So I think that's really important. I've seen applications before people have written screeds and screeds or typed screeds and screeds, and it's not relevant to the post or what they're actually applying for. And again, you want to keep it sharp, keep it smart, keep it relevant. I think that's really key, definitely. Thanks.
Okay, and Jacqueline.
Thanks, Anne. I would probably the flip side of Amanda's comments there in terms of no blank spaces. Usually, towards the middle to the end of an application, there's usually a question that has quite a big space for filling there, and it's usually a question like, what makes you the right person for this role? That's probably the most important section in the whole application form. And the most infuriating thing is when people either look at it and think that's a huge big blank space and get frightened and don't fill anything in, or they come up with one of the cliches that Anupama has mentioned and perhaps say, I'm really good with children, I enjoy working with children, and that's all we get from it. So please don't leave blank spaces and do the best you can possibly do in that question.
Thank you very much. Really helpful there. Now, I'm thinking here of some colleagues who perhaps English is not the first language. So when it comes down to the application form, is there anything that you would like to comment on there? Anupama, we'll start with yourself.
I mean, what I would say is the ability to do your job is most important. So if English is not your first language and you want to make sure that you've come across and you've expressed your experiences and your qualifications clearly, I would say get someone to check it over, that's ask the grammar, to check the spellings, grammar. You can ask a family friend, or you can even contact us, the careers advisors at Skills Development Scotland, and we can help with that as well. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I think someone's maybe not on mute. We get some feedback if that happens. So could I ask you all just to check you're on mute? Could I come to you next, Jacqueline, around that question, around the sort of bringing to the application session?
Sure, thanks, Anne. I think in addition to Anupama's comments, I would say we really love to hear from applicants. So pick up the phone, give us a call, and have a chat with us. And if there's a particular way we can help you, then we'll look to do that. But importantly, if there's a way that we can signpost you to get some help with completing the application, then we're happy to do that as well. I think the important thing for people to remember is, particularly for us at Indigo, we recognise the real value in bilingualism or multilingualism, and the real value that that can bring to an early years environment. So it's actually a real positive, and think about it as a positive. Pick up the phone and give us a call. We're always happy to speak to people. We just want people to be able to present themselves in the best way they possibly can, either at application or interview stage.
I did the cardinal sin there. I forgot to come off unmute. Amanda.
I think my colleagues have probably covered most things. Just to really sort of reinforce, I think, we are about a diverse workforce. We're about having, diversity and embracing that in the workforce. So, I think, yes, definitely, get in touch. There are, there are sort of ways that you can do that, whether it's by phone or by email. I know it's more difficult possibly when you're applying to local authority because it's a much bigger organisation, but you can possibly look at sort of signpost people to settings own websites to have a look and kind of get a feel for what a place is like, in terms of their own kind of vision, values and aims, and approach them that way. I think that's probably quite a good way of being able to sort of find out a bit more about what they do around diversity. And we obviously are an equal opportunities employer, so we would be wanting to promote that, definitely.
Lovely, thank you. And I wonder if we could just maybe stay on the theme of diversity. And let's say that I've got a disability and I'm a bit anxious about if I include that on my application form. Will the people interviewing me be told this? Or, would someone with a similar standard of application form be picked for interview instead of me? So I wonder if we can start with yourself in that one, Anupama.
So with that, remember that, the equal opportunities form, they tend to be kept separately. So that's not usually seen by the potential employer. So employers are actually committed. I mean, Amanda and Jackie might probably be able to say more, but they are committed to interview you if you meet the basic conditions of the job. And the other thing is, if you are concerned about something, then look out for the disability confident employer. That's like a logo, that's a symbol there on the employers who are disability confident. And so that could also help. And the other thing is, if on an application, if they ask you about it, then you mention it. Otherwise, you don't really have to mention it. It's always there in the separate equal opportunities form. That's all I have.
Thank you. And Jacqueline.
Hi there. Thanks. And I think, colleagues have already mentioned the importance of equal opportunities and diversity across the sector. And Anupama's quite right in saying that as employers, we have a legal duty to assess applications on the basis of people's experience and qualifications and contribution to the application form. Nothing to do with who they are, their ability or disability from that perspective. So it's actually against the law for us to consider people in terms of their disability.
Thank you. And Amanda.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to see what my colleagues have said, if the person meets the criteria for the post and they have a disability or not, they would be guaranteed an interview if they meet the criteria. They would go forward for shortlisting. I suppose as well, it's recognising some people choose not to tick the disability box, and that often can be where they may have a neurodiverse condition, so they might have dyslexia, or they might suspect they have dyslexia, maybe never been tested for that. And again, as a as an employer, an employer, them a potential employee, that would be something that we would be wanting to, be open about and be discussing, at interview. I think it's becoming more and more common, and I think as employers we have to be very aware of that. That shouldn't stop somebody from doing a job just because they have dyslexia or dyspraxia or one of the other neurodiverse conditions. So it is being about transparent and open, and that's really important, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Now, during the application questions there, we've picked up quite a lot, and there are more support with the package that will come out after the webinar to have a look at that again. But I think some key points for us there have been really to look at what the job profile is, look at what's essential, what's desirable criteria in there. And I think you've also been given quite a lot of support around the application form. So maybe just a quick one to finish this little section off around the essential criteria, because it's usually up there. If I'm applying and I don't have all that essential criteria, can I still apply for the post? So, Anupama.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, if you have like 8 out of 10 points on the criteria, you meet 8 out of 10 essential criteria, you have a good chance of doing the job well. So go for it. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that people weren't feeling, that if they didn't, then they shouldn't look at that. Jacqueline, anything to add to that?
I think maybe I'm just a little bit more lenient than Anna Palmer. I wouldn't necessarily look for 8 out of 10. I think the important thing for us, as Amanda has said, is around values, the values of the organisation, and there are aspects of that essential criteria that are trainable. And if we have the right person coming to the table with the right qualifications and meeting a reasonable number of the essential criteria, but can demonstrate transferable experience in relation to those essential criteria. So, for example, they may not have one of the specific criteria in a professional capacity, but maybe as part of their family, they may have responsibilities that relate to it that they can express in that way. And so I think go for it, as Anna Palmer said. Just make the best of what you have, explain it in the application form. And again, if you're in any doubt, give us a call. Talk to us before you put it in.
Thank you. And Amanda, anything from you?
I think my colleagues have said it all really, but yeah, I would just say, give it a go, sell yourself in the application, because you never know. I think it's, it's how you come across, and I think that's really important. That's really important. If you're really passionate about early years and you have got some of the criteria there, then, why not? I think that would be, we're looking for people that are eager and keen and have that desire to work in the sector. So I think that is really important as well.
Thank you. And that's really positive, these points about go for it and the passion, because our children in Scotland need the most passionate, caring practitioners that they can possibly have. And I know that the 4 of us are very, very keen on ensuring that's what happens. So that brings us nicely on from the application. We've done all of this work around it. You've sent in your application, and we are now on to the interview section around it. So I've been lucky enough, or I've worked hard enough at my application form, and I've got an interview coming up. So how should I prepare for it? Anupama.
There are a few things you can do to prepare for the interview, First and foremost, I would say research the company, because it is really important to find out what are the company's values, what are their ethos, try and understand all that, because you need to know that you can fit into that. And it also shows that you're really committed and genuinely interested in the company. And it's quite easy nowadays to do the research about companies, because you can get social media, you can go on the employer's website, you can see business sections and there's lots of information available. So it's really good if you can do the research on the company before. And if you know people who are working in that company, you can find them on LinkedIn. You can arrange to have a conversation to find out about people, how they are, how do they feel working over there, what kind of information you can gain from that. And the other thing is to research the job. Now, the job description, now, if the company doesn't provide you with a job description, you can always find out from the databases. Like, for example, if you go to My World of Work, there are job profiles on different kinds of jobs, and you can get the job description there. So look for those keywords in the job description and make sure that you come to the interview able to describe what you think the job is and how your skills and background and your experience fits into the job. So that means you need to identify your skills, your strengths, and see that it matches with the job. And you have done that in the application process, either on the form or the CV, but you need to be able to talk about it in person. And another way of preparing for it is to consider what potential questions that they might ask and rehearse them, your answers. And it's worthwhile, when you're rehearsing it's practicing it, it's worth practicing it out loud. You can ask a friend or family member or someone to listen to your answers, because it's really important to be calm and professional, and your manner is really polite as well when you speak, and that you never use any kind of slang or jargon, and use words that you're comfortable with. And so, preparing for these answers and rehearsing them, that's really useful. And you will find a lot of information in the Positive Steps Handbook, and that's on page 91 to 94. One of the ways is using STAR technique, and that's when you're asked competency-based questions like, tell me about a time when you did this, or tell me about a time when you experienced this, and what did you do? So not all employers ask for this, but if they are going to have an interview format based on competency-based questions, they will usually let you know well in advance. So that brings me to the format and of the interview. So prepare accordingly. So if it's a face-to-face, you know, interview, then make sure you know the route, so that last minute there's no delays and you're on time. If it's a telephone interview, make sure that all your equipment works, you're not going to be disturbed. If it's a video interview, make sure you have the camera properly placed, and your face is not cut off. So practice all that, practice speaking maybe to the camera. And also think about what you want to wear. Just, it doesn't have to be something expensive or anything. Just keep your jewelry to the minimum and keep it professional and simple and tidy. And one of the important things is to use stress busters. So there are some excellent exercises in section 6 of the Positive Steps Handbook, and it helps in relaxation, and it helps to promote positivity, like breathing exercise, facial exercises, visualizations, and affirmations. And that will help you if, in the run up of the interview, if you are doing it on a daily basis. So it's quite a lot of preparation, but I trust you that will really help.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Anupama. Now, we're particularly thinking around early years and childcare here. So can I come to you first, Amanda, and in that prep for interview, any suggestions you would give?
Okay, so I would say that you should have, or be thinking about your knowledge of current legislation, guidance, frameworks across early years. It's really important that you're up to speed with that. So things like realising the ambition, early level curriculum for excellence. If you're applying to a particular local authority, maybe have a look at their website, see what they specifically are promoting and there may be particular strategies around early years. If you've already worked for them, you might have an idea, but if you're coming in cold, maybe from a different geographical area to move to another area to work, then it'd be a good idea to do your homework on that. Look at the last care inspection report, HMIE report, because that will give you a bit of an idea in terms of how they're meeting the standards and what level they're operating at. How do they deliver? What modes of delivery are they all year round? Are they term time only? Again, that'll give you an indication of the actual the setting, and maybe looking at their website, getting a bit of an idea around the locality as well, and the community that that you're applying for a job within, because that helps to build a picture, and it's something that you can demonstrate at the interview. You can talk about if you've maybe done a wee bit of research into that. I think is quite important. I think as well, having a question at the end to ask is really important, because they will say, and over to you. And don't just freeze, because you need to be prepared. You need to have something to ask, and something that's relevant. And there'll be loads of things that you could ask. It could be maybe asking them to expand on something that's actually in the job description itself. It might be a particular area of work that you want to get a bit more information about, or it could be more practical things around hours, work patterns, that sort of thing. I think that would be really relevant too. But it shows that you've thought about the job, you've thought about how, as if you were, you're wanting to be working in that workplace. So I think all of these are quite key things, definitely.
And Jacqueline, would you like to add to that?
Thanks, Anne. I think just picking up on Amanda's point around the legislation, the curriculum and the guidelines, etc. I think that's really important to have sort of read up on those, but I also think it's really important to be able to give examples of where you've got practical experience of that. There's nothing more frustrating than when people sort of rhyme off a list of guidance documents or legislation, but you can see that there's nothing behind that, that they've actually learned the words from the document rather than actually having practical experience of applying those, or even if they've not had professional experience of applying those, that they can give an example of how it's relevant to what they've done in their lives. So demonstrate that you do understand those documents, and that it's not just, somebody sat at my desk at uni or college or something, or I got a list of what's important. So I think that's really important with those. Make sure you have examples, and that stands the same for me in terms of the job specification. So sometimes it can be really hard if you've not been for very many interviews to think about what questions people might ask you. And a really good way to help you with that is to go through the essential criteria, the job specification, and think about practical examples in your life or your experience that you could talk about in relation to each of those things. And if you're comfortable with that, you'll be able to answer anything that comes along. It'll be a breeze for you. You'll not have a problem. I think the values, we've mentioned a little bit about values previously, and that's really crucially important for us, particularly as a third sector organisation. Our values are absolutely crucial. So make sure you really understand those and make sure they sit well with you, and that you can explain how those values work for you, and that you can connect with those, but also looking at the wider community that the nursery is in, that you're applying for, because the wider community has a huge part to play in what we do as well. Demonstrate that you've understood a little bit more about what's going on in that community. And finding out about that can be so easy nowadays between the websites, social media, as Anna Pama mentioned, and newsletters. Most nurseries, most services will have parent newsletters on their website somewhere. They're always a great source of up-to-date information of what's actually going on in the nursery. I think that's probably most of the things I would add.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Now, we've gone through quite a bit there, but do you think there's anything that I should remember when I'm being interviewed? And what would your advice be if I suddenly feel that nerves are taking over? So will we start with Anupama? You're on mute, Anupama.
Yeah, it's important to be polite, professional, and maintain eye contact, whether you're on a video call or we're on a face-to-face interview. And that always say, have a glass of water handy. And it may seem a small thing, but if you're talking a lot and you're feeling nervous, well, this gives you a chance to compose yourself between answers. And so it's always good. Like I've got my glass of water here as well. Always good to have a glass of water next to you. And and another thing is, if you're feeling a bit nervous or, you haven't heard the question properly or something, just ask for clarification. And it's okay to ask the interview to repeat the question because, it's better to ask them to repeat before you answer the question properly rather than, to try and guess or misunderstand what you think they mean. So these are things that are really, and as I mentioned before, there are stress busters which you can start doing a couple of weeks in advance of the interview or even a week before, and that automatically helps you feel a lot calmer. And once you're fully prepared, you will notice that you're actually going to start enjoying the interview. Yeah, that's my
Thank you.
tips.
And that's a wonderful tip to actually enjoy the interview. Sometimes, I think it's the opportunity that actually somebody's listening to you and it's, your time to shine. So
Yeah.
actually, can I come to Jacqueline first this time and then to Amanda to add anything?
Thanks, Anne. Sure, I think I would probably add to the idea of enjoying the interview, because I think that's really crucial. If you can think about it as an opportunity that you are going to enjoy, then that comes across to the panel. It comes across that you're a happy person, that you're engaged, and you really want to be part of that organisation. If you can relax and enjoy it and consider it as an opportunity. As a panel, we're not looking to trick people. We're not looking to trip people up in the process. What we are looking to do is to give you every possible opportunity that we can to demonstrate how good you are, how fantastic you would be for that particular role. So that's all we're trying to do, is to give you the opportunity to be able to do that. So think about it from that perspective.
Thank you. And Amanda.
I think the only other thing I would add in, as everything else the colleagues have said is absolutely crucial, is keep a copy of your application beside you, because that's your work, that's what you've sent in. And if you have made any notes or taken any notes, maybe got wee post-its beside you, that's fine as well. Some people work well with having little cues or things beside them, and that can sometimes just help, because sometimes it's just a word you need to, as a wee trigger. So it's okay to have these, but just take your time, because the people interviewing know that you're under pressure. They know, and they do want you to do well. Of course, we've all been in that position. I think we've all been on both sides of the table, and many times doing lots of interviews and also applying for jobs. One other thing I would have mentioned at the last part when we're talking about interviews as well, is just to thank the panel at the end too. Thank them for their time. I think that's actually really, it shows that you're valuing their time too, because I think that's quite important, and it's a nice way to round off the actual interview process. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's all really helpful advice there. And just before we finish on the interview part here, can I ask Jacqueline and Amanda, is there any difference about how to prepare for an interview in either a council nursery or a private nursery? Jacqueline, if I could start with you.
I think possibly the main difference, we both operate to safe recruitment practices. So we will generally have the same kind of approach to the whole sort of application and interview process. One thing that would be different within the partner provider environment would be that in terms of the advertisements for roles, you're likely to see those on places like Indeed, S1 Jobs, websites, lots on Twitter or Facebook, and sometimes LinkedIn, depending on the role. So not so much on My Job Scotland. That wouldn't normally be the place that our posts would be advertised. So do remember that that's not the only place that you can see posts. I think the other thing is that generally when you are applying to a partner nursery, be that in the private sector or the voluntary sector, then often you know the specific nursery that you're applying to. And so it's even more important in those circumstances that you research the organisation, that you research the nursery, that you get to understand the community that you're going to be working in. So I would say those are probably the most significant differences.
And anything you would add, Amanda?
I think, I mean, I've mentioned already, Jacqueline just mentioned just now, but most of our posts are, well, they're all actually advertised through My Job Scotland. That's the site that we use as a local authority. I think there are a lot of third sector posts advertised there as well, and you know, other public sector roles. The thing about that website, and when I was talking about it before, is that you can actually save your application. So if you're making multiple applications, you might be applying, say for example, you're applying to Edinburgh, they've got 2 or 3 early years practitioner posts up. You can use the first application, and then, because it's your work, you've saved it, you can copy and paste, and then you can add in what's relevant to that particular setting. So it might, you know, obviously you're applying to a different setting, you might want to change slightly what you're saying to make it more applicable to that particular early learning setting. But again, that would give you, you know, that would kind of be a bit of a, I suppose that's a bit of a kind of guide there for that. You know, obviously the closing date, I think they will actually tell you in our adverts, they usually say, you know, interviews will be, or the information will go out to let you know kind of the sort of processes for that. But yeah, I mean, generally that's kind of, I suppose that's sort of how it works for our ones. Yeah.
Thank you. Now we're going to head to the mentee to see what questions are there, and we're going to have around 10 minutes around these questions. So if we can maybe move on to the mentee board. Okay. Now, I just see one question there at the moment. Will we maybe start with... Oh, we're flicking through them now. This is where technology goes a bit quicker than me. Okay, so let's have a wee bash at some of those questions. So when applying to local authorities, can I put the HNC qualification that I'm currently studying in as achieved as long as I'm on track to pass? Okay, that's a very good question. Anna Palmer, what would your advice be there? You're on mute, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think it's a question for the local authorities question, so I think I'll just pass it on to Amanda. I think she's the best place to answer that.
No problem. I can't speak on behalf of other local authorities, so I can only speak on behalf of Edinburgh here. We do have people that have asked us this before. We would expect people to have completed their training before they come, because we obviously we offer training as a provider as well, and we wouldn't take anybody on until they had passed their qualification. Yeah, so it's only fair because other people are applying that have got the qualification. So, you know, that's, I can understand maybe you're just about there, but it's, yeah. But yeah, we need to know that they hold that qualification. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would certainly have said that as well from previous experience, that it's actually the qualification that you hold, and I see Jacqueline nodding there too. So hope that's helpful. When we maybe move on to the next question. Will the jobs that get advertised be full-time permanent positions? That's quite a difficult one to say in general. So would you like to have a wee go at that one, Amanda?
Yeah. Again, I can only speak on behalf of Edinburgh, but I know we do have posts coming up for apprenticeships very soon, actually at the end of March. There will be a mixture of posts. So some posts will be full-time, some will be part-time, some will be permanent contracts, others will be temporary contracts. There are supply contracts available as well. Often local authorities, particularly at the moment, in light of the way things are, there's a shortage of supply staff. So if people are looking, supply is actually a very good way of getting into early learning and childcare. If you don't have a permanent position and you're maybe finishing up and looking to, you know, get into the sector, that is a great way to, you know, to actually get in, and you can then work in different settings and kind of get an idea of what it's like, get a feel for what it's like. So I would say it would be a mixture across, and at no particular time there's any specifics, but there will be permanent posts, certainly within Edinburgh, permanent posts, you know, temporary posts, depends on really where the need is, I guess, where the need is.
And Jacqueline, can I bring you in that one, please, as well?
Sure. In most circumstances, the actual advert will say whether it's full-time, part-time, permanent, sessional, whatever it happens to be. So mostly either the advert or the job pack that comes with it will actually say whether you know, the status of the role, if you like, whether it's full-time or permanent or temporary. I think as Amanda's mentioned, the sort of apprenticeship route, or within the third sector or private sector, you'll often find they may not necessarily refer to it as supply, they might call it sessional, or they may refer to it as support workers, where they would come on board and expect to go through a programme of training with a view to moving on to a qualified position from there. I know that certainly 96% of our candidates who come in as support workers progress into qualified posts, and that goes for our sessional team as well. So as Amanda says, it's a good route in to the sector.
Thank you very much. And we're just seeing there a comment to say that Dundee City will be a mix of full and part-time, etc., just like Amanda had said. Modern apprenticeship, 2 years, excellent training, and guarantee interview for post on completion. So it's good to have a look across what different local authorities are offering, and in the private and voluntary and independent sector. And I think, as Jacqueline has said throughout, if in doubt, you know, phone and ask, you know, to just have some clarity. So here's an interesting one. And I think I'm going to give you a wee heads up that I'm going to go to you first, Anna Palma, on this one. So how should I talk about my strengths and weaknesses? Anna Palma, can I start with you?
Yes. I don't know why you would want to speak about your weaknesses. I mean, there is no need to speak about weaknesses at all, but yes, you need to sell yourself. So you need to speak about your strengths, use, like how I mentioned earlier, make it really action oriented. Don't just say, oh, I am hardworking. Oh, I like children. I love children. No, use an example. Say how you, how what you've achieved. I've used my communication skills um, to get this done, or I have done something else. Make it really action oriented, something that you have achieved, you've done. And I think that is really important about your strengths. And unless you're asked about your weakness, and that would be the response to that, you would have to use the star technique for that, about weaknesses, because at the end of it, you want to show that you've learned something from that. You've learned something, and you have, it's not something that's put you back, but you've learned something and you've gained additional skills with that. So I think that is the way. In general, this is what I would advocate. But how would you say about your job? You look at your job profile, make sure you've identified exactly and match it according to that when you speak about your strengths.
Thank you. And Jacqueline, would you like to add anything there?
I think probably on the weaknesses front, I think we've talked quite a lot about how you sell yourself. I think on the weaknesses front, it's unlikely that a panel are going to ask you to talk about your weaknesses per se. What we often will do is ask you perhaps to talk to us about a time when things didn't quite go as you'd hoped, or things didn't quite go to plan, and tell us a little bit about either what you learned from that or how you dealt with that situation. Because at the end of the day, we all have areas of learning. We all have areas that we need to develop, no matter what stage we are in our career. But what matters is what you learn from it and how you deal with that situation. And those are the really important parts.
Thank you. And Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got much more to add to that. I agree with my colleagues that you wouldn't be asked that particularly. I think, once you're in a post, then it's looking at areas of development, areas for further development. But I think being able to talk about how you've overcome a challenge and showing resilience, I think that's really important, definitely.
Lovely. And I like that positivity there that we're looking for. And in the next question, how do we get jobs through application? Are we signposted from the council or do we pick the place? Right. It mentions council. So Amanda, would you like to have a stab at that one?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. So I'm thinking, so how do we get jobs through application? So the advert will say where you're applying for. I think maybe that's what you're meaning by that. Are we signposted from the council? If it was supply, then you can be asked to go and work anywhere. When in fact, actually, within the council, once you have a contract, you can actually be moved from the workplace you're in to help out in another workplace, because you're there to support the delivery of the service. So that's very much what it's about when you're a public servant. But yeah, you would generally, on the advert, it would tell you where you're applying to. I don't know if I've answered that correctly, or maybe my colleagues are interpreting that differently. I'm not sure. I
think that's how I've interpreted one as well. And I know too, from perhaps rural areas, you will actually be appointed to a specific geographical area, which may mean that you can actually work in different areas, just depending on settings there. But hopefully we've looked at and addressed that one. And just in the light of time, I think we'll go on to the next one. Can I talk about my HNC placement in my job application? I'm going to come very quickly to Anupama there.
Yes, if it's relevant to your application, if there are things from your placement which has your experience, you've gained some knowledge which is mentioned in the person specification in the job profile, go for it, mention it, and it will only strengthen your application. for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And Jacqueline, do you want to add anything to that one?
No, I think the only thing I would say is your placement is every bit as important as anyone else's experience. You know, when you come into a setting on placement, you are every bit as important as anyone else within there. So the experience that you have there is absolutely relevant for your application, provided it's within the same sector, obviously.
Thank you very much. And I'm very aware that there are some other questions, but we will have them addressed and they will be part of the frequently asked questions, which will go along with the whole package to support this webinar. So I'd like to, first of all, thank the presenters, the panel members who've come along, Anupama, Jacqueline, Amanda, thank you so much. You've been an absolute joy to work with. And I think we should maybe take this show out on the road, that we maybe get some gigs doing that. I'd also really like to thank Emma Hall and Audrey Clark, who have been wonderful from the improvement service in the background there. And I'd like to thank all of you who've come along. I know that there will be more information coming out that will support this, so look out for that in the next couple of weeks. And if you could put 3 words up that would help to give us a little snapshot of how you found today's session. So if you could actually do that, that would be wonderful. And all I've got to say is thank you, good evening and good night, and that this will be recorded and you will be able to go back and have a little look at that. So we've got the words coming in. They look really good, helpful, supportive, positive, informative, interesting. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with my colleagues, and as I said earlier, we want to see this profession that we actually love go forward. We want passionate people coming into it. What's happened in Scotland with the 1140 hours has been amazing. It is actually sector and world leading, but we need to make sure our staff are too. So I wish you all well on your future and career. Thank you.